fucking blind. Hello, how are you? Thank you, Donna. It's very sweet of you. Headed out to the beach with your dog, Jebby. You must be in South Florida. I am freezing. So this afternoon I went to the chiropractor and I'm sore. I'm gonna go back tomorrow. I don't know how long I can be on just because sitting here and breathing hurts. It's just muscular, but I just don't like being in pain. Just don't like being in pain. So anyway, apparently our girl Sarah Catherine Dugan applied to be a judge again. I saw that on Facebook, but now I don't see it was 7 minutes ago, an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Oh, here it is. Let me show you. So it says a county judge and 11 lawyers, including a prosecutor in the Dan Markel murder trials, that's Sarah Catherine Dugan, have applied to be the Big Bend's next circuit judge. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, I am not paying for this because it'll be public record in the morning. So, anyway, that's the story. She didn't make it last time. This is what the Second Circuit says, though. So I don't know I don't know what's real and what's not. I know one of the review people, one of the judges or one of the attorneys that is on the review committee, but I'm never asking them who you just would never do that. Complete unredacted applications. But look, it says down here, it says interviews will be held in person on February 20th. Applicants who were interviewed for the previous vacancies will not be re-interviewed. So my guess is they don't have to be re-interviewed. They just have to reapply. That's how I read it. It doesn't say you don't have to come back, right? Just says, I don't know. See how it says, this is so funny after today's hearing. Neither incomplete applications nor applications submitted after the deadline will be considered. Can't you just hear all the attorneys trying to force their way into the application process, knowing that they missed the deadline? We talked about that when Charlie was on trial, that Dan Rushbaum was objecting to nothing. I didn't know that you had to file a written motion with affidavits until today. But you do. This has nothing to do with Ozempic, but thank you. It really doesn't. And it's not referred pain from my stomach. It's not, but I appreciate that. It's not everything, unfortunately. I wish everything was about a shot. It's not. I've had no side effects. This is completely muscular right here. And it's just probably the way I sit so often. I'm aging as I sit here. So I appreciate everyone's medical advice, but it has nothing to do with that. I went in, it was tight. I don't have any bulging discs. I don't have anything like that. It's just probably the way I sit and the way I've been sleeping. So, or not sleeping because it hurts. I'm going to go home and flip my mattress, turn it around. But yeah, that's how I read it. That they don't have to be re-interviewed. She just applied last year, so that is the story. I just don't think they're going to arrest that cow, so I just don't. One of the applicants from last year was Jason Newland's wife, Stephanie. Where is that? Get a heating pad. I have all those things. That's why I go to a chiropractor. Yeah, I'm just going to the chiropractor. Heat doesn't help. You know what hurts it? The cold. God, That's what I feel like. Feel like it was so cold here, and of course, my jackets aren't really 5-degree worthy, and it just was like, so I go home and take a hot shower before I go to sleep. It helps a little bit, but I'm gonna go in tomorrow, get ahead of it. I've been walking more. I have one leg shorter than the other. I got other issues besides. So he pulls my leg back out. So what had happened was when I ruptured my Achilles tendon, it shortened my leg. So I should have gone more often than I did, but I didn't. And so you pay the consequences when you do go. But I felt relief. It's just I don't think this chair helps. It's a cool chair, but I didn't have any problems in the other chair. I feel like in this chair I have problems. But it does look pretty. Definitely looks pretty, but So a friend called me earlier and was like, no one presented evidence at the hearing today. No one presents evidence at an appellate hearing. They prepare briefs, and briefs are submitted through the court docket. For whatever reason, if someone knows and wants to tell me, Donna Adelson's brief is redacted. Her entire file is redacted. So for a public courtroom and for a public setting, why is her entire file redacted? Does anybody know? Hey, Murder, how are you? Boots on the ground. I was on the ground. And I want to know why her entire appellate brief is redacted. I don't even know who to ask. Hey, True Crime Wifey. Everybody. I would really like to know why this woman gets to have all of that redaction. Nobody can tell me. The whole file, 3,600 pages or something is redacted. Her transcript for her trial is not even public yet, and it's been months since it's been almost 6 months. And her transcript isn't even on the docket and redacted. It's just not even on there. Yeah, it says love. My Old Navy. It's like I got it the same time I got the brown one with the heart on it. But why? Why? Listening while baking. What are you making? Thank you. It's warm right now, which is what I need. 'Cause I'm freezing. The room in here is 69 degrees. I have it at 69 and I'm freezing. So that's why I don't know. I'm not cold like I have a cold or I don't have chills. I'm just cold. But my blood pressure's lower. You know, everything happens. It's all like, cool. I didn't even know I made it. Like, you guys are the ones who told me I made the video. To go back and look. Was it my good side? I'm so irritated by that woman, Wendy Adelson. Like, everything about me cannot stand her. Oh, there I am. I am on it. I didn't realize it makes sense they had a forward facing. God, I look like my sister. There's nothing I can do about it. We don't speak. I really don't want to look like her. Forgive me, Father. I really don't want to look like her. I look so much like her. So bad. There I am freezing. Oh, wait, let me show you. If you didn't get a chance to see it, I guess there was a Zoom that I didn't know about.
All right, here we go. Let's
Here I
listen
am
in,
right
everyone.
there. I didn't realize it came. I only saw WCTV's camera.
Whatever he said, I didn't hear.
Yeah, he said no cell phone usage, no photos.
This is the chick
we're
whose
getting ready to
whose
go.
phone went off.
So
This
Hopefully
one
the
right
audio
here.
is going to be a lot better than that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. I don't know that he was speaking into a mic, but
Yeah,
He
he stood
wasn't
in front of the
speaking into a
well
mic.
and did not use a microphone. So hopefully the microphones are connected to the audio.
I hope
yeah.
so too, because I didn't hear him at all.
Well, there was a caveat on
There's
their
Maya,
website saying
mentor
barring
lawyer.
technical difficulties, we will stream live. So this is
Alicia
not
Devine.
a great.
All right.
These people, I don't. Her
Go.
name was Jennifer, but she let her phone go off.
Before this court draw near to attention, you shall be heard. May God save these United States, the great state of Florida, and this honorable court.
I
As
love
I
it
pull
when
up
they
my
do that.
pants,
I wish
Lord
you'd
have
done it
mercy.
more.
I hate
Manning
watching myself.
is specifically a case where we know from the dissenting opinion, the request to change venue was not renewed.
But
We know-
I'm going to repeat, Manning was decided 24 years before Armstrong in 2003, where the Supreme Court specifically said the failure to renew is waiver of the claim.
I understand.
That's precedent that's
She does not sound like she's bending, does she?
binding on this court, is it not?
The court doesn't, we're all familiar with the principle that a court
The Markells were not in the room. The appellant, which is Charlie Adelson, was not in the room. This is only the time for the attorneys to lash it out, which is what makes it fascinating to me.
doesn't overrule itself sub silentio. The court has not specifically said Manning's no longer good law.
Tim, the whole time, was just writing notes on a yellow pad.
That being said, I rely upon Manning because it was ultimately reached consistent with what I think the U.S. Supreme Court has said is an appellate court's burden to go through the record in one of these cases to determine if there's a change of venue issue. But beyond that, I will acknowledge that at the very least, to the extent that this court finds that it's not preserved because it was not renewed, then the question is it fundamental error? And I submit that based on the facts of this case, we do meet the fundamental error standard. In the Smith case just 4 years ago, the Florida Supreme Court specifically said that the failure to preserve a change of venue claim can nevertheless be reviewed under the fundamental
Well, my
error
understanding is, the reason we have this very, very unusual requirement for, a renewal of an objection is not just simply, it's not just Simon says, just, you got to do it twice or else. It's that it is possible that the defense is happy with the jury. It's generally in the challenge context when you challenge a juror and they want to see whether you renew that challenge, that
Thank you,
are
Patty.
in fact satisfied with the jury. So I don't know if you can say that it's a fundamental error issue if in fact the defense was satisfied with the issue. Now, I did believe when I saw Armstrong, it's like, wait a minute, it's not what happened in Joyner. It's not a cause challenge, it's change of venue.
Correct.
But when you read Armstrong, it's very clear. First of all, it says that a change of venue motion is premature until you actually attempt to select a jury. What
Correct.
that says to me is a change of venue is a jury selection issue.
Sure.
And what I draw from that is that, just as Judge Rowe is saying, if you in fact are able to find jurors who swear that they are untainted, then I don't know if there is in fact a change of jury issue. It very well may be that the defense thinks,
Thank you, Liza.
okay, I found untainted jurors. I don't really have any reason to continue with a change of venue objection. So that raises two things. Number one, whether the fact that you have untainted jurors overcomes the fact that the community may have had a low level of taint. And number two, the suggestion that it's fundamental error when the whole point of the objection is that the defendant is satisfied, which I don't think a fundamental or claim can overcome.
So a couple of responses to that. Again, the Smith case is 2021, and it's specifically page 28 of the Florida Supreme Court's opinion. And they clearly went on to address the claim for the change of venue motion, despite the fact that it was not preserved. And they did so under the fundamental error standard. And so I'll quote from the case.
But isn't there a difference between preservation and waiver?
Sure. Well, yes. But so if we're going to waiver, and now if you're addressing what my client said at the conclusion of jury selection, that's no waiver on my client's part when the judge specifically told him, you have no choice.
I guess perhaps I should just read Armstrong again, because Armstrong says a motion for change of venue should be renewed at the conclusion of jury selection or be considered waived. So it is the failure to object that is the waiver in this context. I mean, do you read it any differently than I do?
If that were the case, then Smith in 2021 would be wrong. And Smith obviously is more current and specifically says that because the issue was not preserved, because it was not renewed at the conclusion of the jury selection proceeding, we review this claim for fundamental error. So I submit to you, again, this court has the ability to review the claim.
He wears a bow tie to everything, which is why when we were outside, I knew exactly who it was because he wears a bow tie. And it was beautiful. It's silk. It's beautiful tie.
Smith from the Florida Supreme Court very recently has said for at least a change of venue claim. It may be different for a peremptory challenge, the failure to grant a cause challenge, but when it comes to change of venue, the Florida Supreme Court has specifically said it can be reviewed for fundamental error. And I guess going back to Manning, and I understand the time difference, but Manning would be a great example of that. You literally have the attorney in Manning saying at the conclusion of jury selection, I believe we picked a fair and impartial jury. And I submit that there's no jurist in this state that would review the facts and reach a conclusion, unlike what the Florida Supreme Court did, that there's no way that venue could have been fair within Columbia County in that case. So that's exactly why these claims can still be reviewed for fundamental error.
Just generally speaking, you know, normally when we talk fundamental error, it's because that an error wasn't preserved below. Can
Correct.
fundamental error be affirmatively waived?
If defense counsel had said, if the question rather than to Mr. Adelson, do you accept this jury? And let me point out, you have no choice but to accept the jury, but answer me anyways, do you accept this jury? If it had been defense counsel, you previously raised some objections. Do you now no longer renew those objections and accept this jury? If that would be the case, I would have no ability to make an argument.
Charlie should be very upset he spent $1 million on Dubin. And he should be even more upset he spent as much money he does on Rashbaum, which this attorney Ufferman does blow Rashbaum out of the water. And I was thinking about it today. I was going over when I realized that there were more judicial nominees coming out, and Sarah Catherine Dugan is applying again for a judge. What are the vacancies? Judge Cooper is retiring at the end of this month. I'm sure it's an age thing. You know, they have to retire at a certain age. And I was looking at the bar punishments. I thought, oh, they're not going to go after Rashbaum right now. I don't even know why I hadn't thought of that. So if you recall, months ago, I made a bar complaint against Daniel Rashbaum for his ability and inability to be a professional during the court trial and subsequently Donna's trial. And I thought about it today, and I don't know why I didn't correlate the two, but even if the bar was going to lose its mind over Daniel Rashbaum, which they, in my opinion, they should, they're not going to do it until after this appeal is over. Because think about it. If they go in and fine Daniel Rashbaum and suspend him for 3 days, that's a win for Charlie Adelson. And never occurred to me until today. Ever occurred to me. That is why I look every month to see who's in trouble with the Florida bar and realize today they can't do anything. It has to be on hold. Because if they do it, Charlie gets a win. And I just thought about it like 2 hours ago.
Argument in front of you today. That would be waiver. That's not at all what we have in this record. I think the
Well, it
fact.
sounds to me like you're going up a 3850 avenue, but let me ask you this question. Is Armstrong's a 3850 appeal?
Correct.
The other cases we're talking about earlier were direct appeals. Is
Correct.
that distinguishable?
Perhaps. I mean, again, a lot of times when the Florida Supreme Court considers 3850s, they also consider 9.141s in the context of failure to raise issues on direct appeal. And that's also the way, in Hilton at least, that the ways
Thank
these
you,
claims are
Art,
being
for
raised. But again, in a direct appeal claim, in a direct appeal, the issue is it preserved? If it's not, can it be reviewed for fundamental error? I submit that there are some things that cannot be. Generally speaking, the failure to renew a cause challenge is not something that's going to be reviewed for fundamental error. The Court's been clear about that. And if there is a specific waiver on the record, we don't have that here, then no, you wouldn't be able to review it for fundamental error. Waiver trumps fundamental error. We don't have a waiver here, and I submit that fundamental error is still the standard.
But surely you're not arguing that now a trial judge has to, who's represented, a defendant's represented, now a trial judge has to look to the defendant who's represented by counsel to say, do you individually accept a jury?
I have no idea why the judge did that in this case. It's
But are you promoting a bifurcated question by a trial judge to counsel and a defendant?
I think well, in the context that the judge is asking the question in this case is it fairly could be construed as, do you have any other strikes? And that's why, and every time that question was being asked, there was a strike because there were back strikes in this case. So ultimately, when he just asked the same question he'd been asking up until that point, the question was, do you accept this jury, i.e., do you have any other strikes? And I guess let me throw out there, you have no other strikes, so you have no choice but to accept the jury. That's why it's being said here. Again, I acknowledge it's incumbent upon defense counsel to jump in and specifically say, we renew the objection, but if that's not done, it's still reviewed for fundamental error. I see that I'm getting my rebuttal time. I would like to make a
So these attorneys, the states and the defendant attorney, and then the judges, they know basically what he's going to say, what the argument is, because it's written in the brief. They can't really go outside of the brief, right? You get your shot when you write the brief and then you plead your case. Very similar to the United States Supreme Court. If you ever get a chance to listen, you only get audio. There's no cameras in federal court. However, very similarly done. It was so fascinating to sit there. Really amazing.
couple other quick points
Counsel,
about the merits.
I'm going to extend your time by 5 minutes. I'll
Thank
do
you.
the same thing for the state.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do need to address, so we have, and I've already talked about this, the almost 40 or a little more than 40%. We have the Tallahassee community. We have the different ways that social media infects jurors in a community now, but we have more than that in this case. In Patton, the U.S. Supreme Court said exactly this: adverse pretrial publicity can create such a presumption of prejudice in the community that the jurors' claims that they can be impartial should not be believed. The U.S. Supreme Court is saying that
And they're saying that, and they probably are saying that on a record where there was a record that the media exposure was indeed adverse.
Well,
And again, we can't presume.
They do hear the arguments and then take weeks and months to decide. That's exactly how it works, Debbie. But they get the brief in advance because the judges study the brief and then they study the argument played and they study the case law mentioned in the brief. So in the state's brief, case law was mentioned, cases were mentioned that the defendant ignored, like Armstrong, which is a big one, which is what Judge Everett relied upon, that said you have to at least attempt to seat a jury, and only after you cannot seat a jury would that then, and that's their argument. They're saying Everett was incorrect.
That,
But
can we?
let me go further with that, Your Honor. What they're saying is there could be such intense media influence in a case that we may not even believe
I
what
do
the
not
jurors
have
are
a
saying.
tan.
And if I came to you with no evidence in the record and said, that's what we have here, you would say, Mr. Rufferman, you're speculating. We have 2 instances where jurors lied directly to the trial court, asked
So
point
are we
blank.
supposed to just assess the credibility of these jurors? Is that what an appellate court is to do under this theory?
No, but what we have in this record is 2 instances where jurors were specifically asked, have you formed an opinion about
What Melissa's saying, that Jared Ross, he's the middle attorney right here. He's local. He's actually, I think he's the chief attorney for the Florida Beer Association or something like that. But he is an attorney, and he was the one who supposedly dated Wendy back, wherever they live. I don't like even saying her name. She makes me sick. So, that is true. Like if you look at Catherine Magbanua's appeal and Sigfredo's appeal, they're just saying it denied. They don't ever really give an opinion on why it's denied. It's just denied. And a great way to read that is to go back into the first DCA, the District Court of Appeals docket. You can go back and read denied. How great of a job is that you just say no? It's like my dad. Can I go? No. But no, it's just no. No, there's no explanation. You just can't do it.
Guilt in this case, or have you posted anything on social media about this case? In both instances, the jurors said no. In one case, thanks to good defense counsel, good lawyering,
Here's my issue with that one, because they keep bringing up Erwin Jackson. Erwin Jackson is a property owner, invested here. I know him very well. He is almost 80 years old. He was up for the Charlie jury, like in the jury poll. Maybe, I don't know. I shouldn't have said almost 80. He's going to kill me. He's older. Clearly looks older, kind of like an overweight Abraham Lincoln. He's very tall. And he's going to kill me. They say, well, did you ever say? Erwin Jackson is rarely on Facebook, let alone asking him to remember now 8 years before. That would have been really hard for an Erwin Jackson to do. When he got removed because Dan Rashbaum asked the deputy to remove him, the bailiff, because he was afraid that Erwin, after he was excused as a juror, was going to yell in public. That is not Erwin Jackson. He's a very stately man. Very stately, very composed. And he owns like 700 properties in here. He owns a lot of property. And so he comes and sits next to me because we know each other. And he was like, it's a gaggle. So we're talking and he's like, Patty, they said I had social media. I can't find anything. So I went through, because I'm very good at social media, and I did several searches. It was years ago that he posted something that was so innocuous, but the fact was he did do it. And so he's like, well, I got to accept that. I did do it. But he didn't do anything like at my age. I would have to really go back and say, did I ever say that? And I would probably want to do that before I sat under oath. But they didn't get their phones. They're not allowed to do that when they're being questioned or voir dired. So it's kind of like a twixt and a twang. So that's my defense of Erwin Jackson.
they had a couple of posts from that juror and presented him to the trial court where that juror had said that the parents of Professor Markell should assist in killing Mr. Garcia.
didn't say
And then
that,
went
though.
further when my client was charged and said, surprise, surprise, Mr. Adelson is charged. But the worst one is by far the next one. Mr. T is how I refer to him, as the first initial of his last name. Mr. T stood in front of the trial court and when asked, have you formed an opinion about whether or not this defendant is guilty? He point blank told the court, no. Lo and behold, 2 jurors later, Miss M comes in and by happenstance is asked the question, has anyone been discussing this case amongst the jurors? Oh, why, yes. In fact, that gentleman that was just excused with the glasses, what's he been saying? He's been going around telling other jurors that Mr. Adelson is guilty.
And both of those jurors were excused for cause, were they not?
Yes, but statistically, if those two, it's very hard to prove someone's lying. Usually you rely upon some.
So when someone says statistically, shouldn't you have the statistics? Mr. Ufferman didn't show up with statistics, and neither did that social media consultant that they paid big money for. They didn't come up with any statistics for Donna. They were like, there's 60 times 60. There were no surveys. There was no polling, which the appellate judges mentioned that in a previous case, they did the polling and they did measure that in a lot more to provide accurate statistics.
Luck or some good lawyering with coming up with the post. So we know that one juror reported the other juror, and that's how we know that juror was lying.
And then being careful, defense counsel was offered the opportunity to review the tapes of the jury assembly room to see what comments were made, what are the reactions of the other jury members, and defense counsel said, no, I don't want to see it.
But here's the problem with that. And going to the second claim now. The second claim is a very specific, easy fix. We know for the second group of 50 jurors, 51 through 102, problems were happening. We know about halfway through jury selection, it's reported, number one, that jurors have not followed the judge's direction, so much so that the judge, when he heard about this after two of the jurors reporting that the jurors have been talking about the case, goes out and admonishes those jurors pretty sternly, do not talk about this case. But we also know—
But the problem is the content of those communications. And they were like this, high profile case. It's the Charlie Adelson case. It's the Dan Markell case. Which of the, and that he's guilty. But again, the trial court offered your client the opportunity, the defense counsel, go listen to the recordings in the assembly room and you can bring back some statements that would in fact taint the jury. How did these statements taint the jury?
We have four statements, right?
Right.
So we have one where a juror said, we've been talking about it all day, is literally the quote. We have another where there's some pretty—
Talking about it, I mean, content. Let's get to the content.
talking about the case all day.
Again, but that you could have questioned those jurors to get specific information on what content tainted the jury.
Okay, that's one juror. A second juror then said that there had been a lot of talk about he's a professor at the law school and revealing a lot of the facts about the case. There was a divorce going on between the professor and the wife, but the two that are far the most concerning are the two jurors that specifically went back, a male and a female, the one with the glasses and then an older female that went back and told the other jurors he's guilty. In fact, if you look at juror C on page 2581, you have, coincidentally, when she's asked, after she reports that she's heard that this female juror is saying that he's guilty, oh, what's your opinion? I think he's guilty too. This is influencing the entire, that set of the panel. So
There she is. And
let me come back to why I think this was an easy fix. There was three groups of 50. It was clear 8 of the jurors that sat on the jury came from this middle group, 51 to 102. At the midway point, the judge admonished the jurors to no longer talk about the case again. And the judge said, from this point forward, every juror, we should ask them, have you been discussing the case? Of those 8 jurors that came from the middle group, 4 preceded those two things. So for those 4 jurors, we have no, and I can quickly tell you the page numbers regarding those. I have the names, I apologize. I will say them. It's Brazos, 2467, it's Kraft, 2497, Milne, 2514, Hawley, 2528. Those 4 jurors were all exposed to
somebody saying, I think that the defendant is guilty.
yes, multiple
So-
times.
Okay, so they rendered that, so you have jurors who probably shouldn't be serving and didn't serve, is my understanding.
How many other were influenced by that?
Expressing their opinion that the person was guilty, but don't we typically, we're going to strike a panel, or require the striking of a panel when facts come in that would otherwise not be admissible. Isn't that the typical standard for striking a veneer?
Strike 50 jurors, just those 50. The clerk actually
That's
said,
fine, but the reason for it isn't that somebody has rendered an opinion as to the guilt of the defendant. It's whether they've been exposed to facts about the case that would otherwise have been inadmissible.
oh, I don't agree with that, Your Honor. Jurors constantly saying, when they've been told not to talk about the case, talking about the case and saying he's guilty and being exposed to that, when you already have all of the social media presence that's involved in this case, that's improper. And again, the fix was easy. When they weren't sure in the third group of 50 whether or not they were going to finish, the clerk said, we have another group of 50 downstairs. How easy would it have been?
How is any of this an appellate issue? I mean, the poor man, you're getting about his tie or whatever. The man had nothing to work with. 0 to work with. He's literally pulling out, but the Cheerios weren't a perfect circle. I don't even know where that came from, but that's what it sounds like. The Cheerios were not a perfect circle. You're selling them as a perfect circle, but they're not a perfect circle. Judge, they're not. So they can't be Cheerios. What? I don't know where that came from, but that was a great metaphor, Patricia. And thank you so much, Debbie. That means so much to me. Thank you very, very much. You guys are so kind. I really do appreciate it. Very nice of you. But doesn't that sound like, but Judge, they sat down and they thought he was guilty. And they said, ooh, they made a look. Ooh, I mean, the man bless his heart, he's a brilliant attorney from what everything I've read, had nothing to work with. Charlie didn't get perfect Cheerios. Sorry, Charlie. It's crazy listening
For the
to
judge
this.
to say, wow, I mean, he was mad, you could tell. I'm frustrated. They're not following my directions. They're
Couldn't we
lying.
have- Couldn't we have sidestepped some of the speculation if the tape of the jury assembly room had been reviewed and then some content specifics argued?
I think it's clear that this 50 was tainted. And if you go back to the Manning case, what the Florida Supreme Court said that every reasonable
This is another reason why you don't represent someone that you think is just like your mother. God forbid, Dan Rashbaum's mom. You do not do this because Dan Rashbaum skipped the steps. When I go to sell a house, there's a contract. There's steps that you have to take before you even get to the point of the contract, before you even present someone into a home that they don't own yet. Before you're going to open your lockbox, there are steps that have to take. Dan Rashbaum didn't make any of those steps. He didn't object. We talked about that during the trial and after the trial. He did not object. You got to object. And now I completely understand. And Upperman's like, they teach this. The man did not object. That's what he said in the post hearing press conference.
Every reasonable step should be taken to preserve a defendant's trial by an impartial jury. And to this end, if there is a reasonable basis shown, the court should take action. There's, without question, a reasonable basis. We have one juror that said, you living in Tallahassee, you'd have to be under a rock to know about this case. Another juror said, the impact that this had on me, when you hear about this, it sticks with you. We have so much about this case, but then when you boil it down to that middle 50, and we know that there's not one, not two, 4 different jurors that has disclosed that they've been talking about the case and is getting the judge frustrated. He has to re-admonish them, but he doesn't go back and question the ones that have already been questioned about whether or not they've heard discussions from other jurors. And 4 of those jurors who were never questioned ultimately sat on this jury. That's a reasonable basis for the judge to have taken the easy step. You're right. At this point, I'm frustrated. They're not following my instructions. 51 through 102, they're done. Let's bring up the next 50. I will be very clear going forward. He was. And if we need to go to the 4th 50, we will. That's what should have been done. And because of that, my client didn't get a fair trial. I'll reserve my last minute for rebuttal. Thank you.
And I will extend you an additional 3 minutes, and the same for the state. So you'll have a total of 8 extra minutes.
Certainly a vigorous defense. That was Michael Ufferman,
May it
the
please the
appellate attorney
court.
for
My name is
Charlie.
Charlie Lee. I work for the Attorney General's office and I represent the state of Florida in this case. I'd like to start out with the questions the judges here have asked today. One thing I do want to clear up is the preservation issue that Mr. Adelson claims in Manning in his reply brief. He talks about that in that case, the attorney below never filed a written motion, didn't renew his objection to the jury or anything like that. Those facts come from the dissent in Manning. The 3 justices of the Florida Supreme Court who felt that Manning should not have his conviction overturned, who felt he did get a fair trial, noted that his attorney affirmatively accepted the jury. Now from Manning, we've come to Armstrong. And Armstrong is backed up.
This guy looks so different on camera than he did in person. He looks like, in person, he looked like he was about 29 years old.
By all the cases where we have Batson challenges. If someone files a Batson challenge saying they didn't have a fair jury because of the demographic makeup of their jury, if they affirmatively accept that jury, then they've affirmatively waived that objection. They have to do it once again. They cannot accept the jury like Mr. Adelson did twice to his jury and to the alternate jurors.
But isn't really, change of venue is not the same as failure to renew specific challenges to specific jurors. It is a much broader, as Mr. Ufferman was talking about. It has to do with what was known by the community. It's whether the community is one that cannot hear the case. It's not necessarily about individual jurors. So why should we apply this rule that I understand what Armstrong says, but I've also read Joyner. And I know that that's where the Supreme Court first made this rule very, very clear. And they made it in the context of challenges to particular jurors. Why should we apply it? Forget what Armstrong says. Why should we apply it?
You should
to,
apply it because
change
it
venue?
is about individual jurors. Because Mr. Adelson, he's entitled to an impartial jury. He's not entitled to an impartial community or city or world. There are people out
That was such a great line. So good.
there who are going to prejudge Mr. Adelson's case. There's people out there that will prejudge every case. In every jury selection, there will be jurors on the panel that will say that they believe the defendant's guilty just because he's sitting in the defendant's seat. That happened in Mr. Adelson's case. It'll happen in every case that's tried this week at the Leon County Courthouse. It has to do with the actual jurors. One of the things that Mr. Adelson brings up in his reply brief is structural error. And I'm going to explain why this isn't structural error, although Mr. Adelson has waived that because he didn't bring it up in his initial brief. But let's look at the 12 actual jurors that served on Mr. Adelson's jury. Adelson accepted all 12 jurors during the pre-screening phase. All 12 said that they would be fair and impartial. Mr. Adelson gives us no reason to believe them. As Judge Thomas pointed out, there's not a clear record here of why we shouldn't believe them. And Judge Rowe pointed out, because affidavits weren't filed in this case, we don't know what the pretrial publicity is. This isn't like Shepard v. Maxwell. This isn't like Irvin v. Dodd, where, you know, Mad Dog Irvin was in the press, as serial killer in the press all the time. It's not like those cases. We don't know because Mr. Adelson didn't file a legally sufficient motion.
But he did show that of the 54 prospective jurors who had a considerable amount of media exposure, that 53 of them found that Mr. Adelson was guilty and said that they couldn't be impartial. Now, there's much of jurors might be lying about whether they had the exposure. Is it also possible that jurors were lying that they couldn't be impartial and absolutely thought he was guilty to get out of jury service? I mean, I think there's a lot of speculation going on here that we really can't get to.
Well, that's where I point to Singer, a case that Mr. Adelson relies upon. And in that case, and this is a 1959 Florida Supreme Court case, they said that the Florida Supreme Court said they had some doubt as to the impartiality of a fairly large number of the veneer men, which might be indicative of the inhabitants generally of the community. But we cannot determine error on doubt. That's the Florida Supreme Court in Singer.
So would it have been different, for instance, if Mr. Adelson had brought forward evidence that there were 100 broadcasts on the Preston Scott Show, that there were 200 pieces by WCTV, 300 articles in the Democrat, 50 podcasts and court TV programs, and that all of the speakers in those programs, or some high percentage of them, pointed to guilt for Mr. Adelson? Would that be different?
It might be different. All we have is secondhand knowledge of the jurors that were there. That's all we have. It might be different. We have, I think the court TV host is the only one that we know expressed a negative opinion.
And even the jurors who were interviewed about their exposure to the media sources I just listed, some of them found that those sources were credible, and some of them found that they weren't credible. They called into doubt whether the person who was on one of the news programs was partial or not, right?
Correct, Your Honor. And as to Mr. Adelson's numbers, I disagree. I noted he quotes 29 jurors in his initial brief. I noted 22 that said they couldn't be fair and impartial. But even saying it's 40%, which I believe is what he's arguing today, that's a far cry from Irvin, where it was 2/3 of the jurors had extreme bias against Mr. Irvin. I mean, he was a serial killer that in the press, I believe several
I don't have
states
time to go.
sheriffs had said that.
I don't have time tonight to go through this whole thing. Let's jump to where Professor Joe talks. That's what counts. That's what I want to hear.
Had to have been about nefarious.
Out those jurors were
Certainly, he could have brought forward the
decade, this case has been going on in this, as the judge said, small community. 2 jurors lied.
Be crossing who are both inside the gallery. They will come out. But really, it had to do with the media coverage and others inherently biasing the jurors. And Michael Offerman talking about these 53 of 54 jurors who had a strong opinion against Charlie Adelson, the judge pointing out those jurors were struck, and then we went back and forth. I took pretty copious notes. We'll go through it, but what was your overall take on this? It was fascinating to watch. I'm sure it is a requirement of law school students to watch an appellate hearing like this. I can tell you firsthand, Jared, with all due respect to your wife, who I'm sure is a million times smarter than me, not something I could ever do. Way too
Nor could I.
level. Way too high level, way too intellectual, and involves way too much work. Joe Tudo, your thoughts on this? It was
Well,
fascinating.
I had several. I loved it.
Yeah,
I would give the
I
panel.
thought you would.
Yeah, I did. I got a real kick out of it. I would give the panel an A+. They not only knew what law and had reread those cases clearly before they came in, but they were extraordinarily familiar with the record and what was in the transcript, which I also thought was just really great. And they were very, very, very familiar with the arguments in the briefs. So I don't know that they could have come in better prepared for this case. I can't imagine what they could have done better. I thought their questions were very good. As to the lawyers, I thought Michael Ufferman was pretty good. He tried not to, that's what reminded me so much of law school, Jared. He tried not to respond to the first question that he got from the middle judge, whose name I don't remember. I'm just bad with names. Yeah.
Judge Rowe.
And she came back at him twice before he finally addressed or tried to address what she wanted. But I thought in general, he did a very good job. I was, Jared, less impressed with the state. I thought he was disjointed. He didn't start out giving a.
So right there where Tim Jansen lifts up his head and he's like, probably, that was me asking him a question. What did he think the outcome would be? Worst case scenario, 2-1. And he said, probably. That was me standing next to him.
Making it more thematic and then going to what he wanted to say. He got a sort of a lob from one of the justices at one point and he didn't hear it that way. And he tried to respond when he could have just embraced the lob and he didn't, which happens. I understand that happens when you're in the heat of an oral argument. You just can't hear that the judge is really helping you out sometimes.
The male judge, that's who that was.
It was the judge actually that made an argument, or one of the judges that made an argument that he should have done in his answer. And I can find it here if I look a little. And I was surprised that he didn't. But I thought in general, it was a very, very good argument. I think Michael Ufferman did on this record the best he could. I was a little surprised that I knew that it was going to be the jury and the other stuff just wasn't going to matter. I was a little surprised he started with the change of venue rather than point 2, which was the jury pool being potentially tainted by the comments, and then move back to the change of venue, because I think that pretrial publicity, that argument about change of venue, I just don't think doesn't fly. Certainly doesn't fly on its own, whereas point 2 could have flown on its own. So, and then Jared, you may know this. What is a 3850 as compared to a direct appeal? I mean, they shouldn't use these Florida numbers and not tell me what the hell they're talking about.
3850 is the post-conviction.
It's ineffective assistance of counsel.
Yeah, ineffective assistance of counsel. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Tim Jansen, you were in the gallery for this. Your takeaway overall?
I think the questions by the judges were brilliant. I think they hit the points that were really important. One of the justices, Winokur, hit it right on. If you have a rule that says you have to file something in writing beforehand, but the Supreme Court says that you have to try to pick a jury, and then what are you supposed to do? Suspend court and then file something in writing? It defeats the purpose of having the rule. Now, they could have done polling and they could have filed something ahead of time, which they didn't do. I think Mike Offerman did a great job for what he had. And you saw at the end what he said. The judges say, well, you're talking about ineffective. He goes, absolutely, I'm going to be talking ineffective and conflict, and you're going to see me again. Because it's clear from this record, the lawyer did not preserve, he waived, they did little preparation, they didn't even listen to the audio when they were given that chance, they did nothing. They just stomped their feet around and did nothing to preserve issues for appeal.
Yeah, Tim, I thought that was fascinating. That was kind of said in passing at the end by Michael Ufferman. He said that there was conflict of interest with the defense attorney, meaning Dan Rashbaum, and there was ineffective assistance of counsel. Why wasn't that argued this go around? Is he going to have to file some sort of separate appeal to argue that, Tim? And when would that happen?
Yeah, the 3.850 ineffective counsel has to be done after the direct appeal. So once this appeal is resolved, then he has 2 years up from the mandate of this decision to file an ineffective assistance, and I'm sure he will. And he said he will. Mike's already been hired, and he mentioned it on the record he is.
Yeah. COE, if you can start to gather up some questions, that would help me a ton. But Jared, one of the questions I saw asking our panel, not the panel of judges, but you, who are our judges, if any of these arguments influence you one way or the other. I mean, after watching this, Jared, do you now feel that maybe, impartially, if that's even possible, if maybe Charlie does deserve a new trial?
I'll agree with both Joe and Tim that I think Michael Upperman did a great job with what he had. And I know I saw in the comments a lot of people saying he's talking too fast or he's too loud. Or you got to remember, you have a clock in front of you ticking down. You have to get your arguments in there as quickly as you can, and you're being interrupted at every turn. So that's why he's talking fast there. I know in a trial court, you want to be slow and deliberate and, as clear as you can. This is a different animal. But no, I don't think his arguments swayed me at all. I think they were as persuasive as they could have been for the facts that he had. But we all have watched this. For those of us that are never going to be seated on a jury in this case or never going to work on this case, I think it was very well said by Charlie Lee that he's entitled to an impartial jury. He's not entitled to an impartial community or.
Look at that question by this Adam Lamparello. Let me remove this. Great question. And it reminds me of pass interference in football. He says, even assuming defense counsel was ineffective, what evidence shows actual prejudice that the outcome would have been different with the effective representation? And that is like a football question to me. So with pass interference in American football and the quarterback throws the ball, and I'm like I'm a quarterback, throws the ball, it has to be a catchable ball. It can't just be pass interference. So if the ball is like 25 feet from the recipient, doesn't count. It's not pass interference. You don't get that first down. You don't get it. So that's where I was like, yes, I don't know if that counts in lawyering, even if assuming the defense counsel was ineffective. What evidence shows that the actual prejudice, that the outcome would have been different with effective representation? I don't know that that's what they look at. Maybe some of you do know.
Impartial citizenship. I can't remember the exact words he used, but we have information and we have seen things that jurors or prospective jurors may not have seen. He didn't sway my thoughts at all. But again, I think he did a great job. And I think that's why you've heard Tim say it. I've heard my wife say it, who has argued against Michael Upperman in that courtroom. He's very good at what he does. But at the end of the day, you have to remember there is a small amount of cases. I think it's anywhere between 8 and 9% of cases in the entire state of Florida that are overturned on appeal. It's a very small amount. And this is not one that I foresee being overturned. Yeah, certainly not on this appeal.
Yeah, and that quote was, Charlie Adelson's entitled to an impartial jury but not to an impartial city, state, or world.
Yeah.
Very, very eloquently stated. Adam Lamparello with a super chat. Thank you, Adam. And I do believe, Joe Patuto, that Adam is an attorney, hence the scales of justice. Even assuming defense counsel was ineffective, Joe Patuto, what evidence shows actual prejudice that the outcome would have been different with effective representation?
Yeah, and I will say that the state didn't argue anything on what you would call harmless error, which is even if there was an error here, would anything have been different? Um, I
Which they will argue if it
Of
goes to the
course they will.
3850.
Yeah, that's right. When the next time, when they get back to the collateral attack, yeah, or the 38, what is it, 3850? I thought that's
3850.
what it was, but seemed to me they should have said it better. Yeah, well, the argument that he's making though is that the kind of error that happened, you can't really show what the prejudice was because there's no way to pull up the veil and really find out that the jurors had a bias. You can't trust what they're saying, and he used the evidence of two to show that they might misrepresent or lie. You can't trust when jurors say, gee, I heard it, but it didn't affect me, that it is fundamental and structural that there's no way to demonstrate what the prejudice is, but the structural error says we have to assume that there's prejudice. That was the argument he kept trying to make. And I think he did a pretty good job of articulating it, and the judges had read the brief, so they knew exactly what he was saying there.
Yeah, if you guys will indulge me, I'm also just keeping an eye on Tim, who I think is trying to relocate to a better position. But claim one was the trial court failure to change venue. That's how Ufferman came out. By the way, he speaks like the guy at the end of a pharmaceutical ad reading the disclaimer, but you've got to do that. Speak quickly when you've got very limited time.
That's
and again, I
funny.
see Tim trying to log on here. And then Jared, just coming right out of the gates here.
Thank you,
he
Murder. Thank
talked
you,
about
everyone.
striking jurors 51 through 101, or the failure to do so. He says of the 130 jurors.
It was funny. Rebecca and I went to breakfast afterwards because I told you earlier, I was starving. Like I was going to eat my face. And she's like, you look good and you're not sagging. I just got a kick out of that today. Thank you, Rebecca. She's such a good friend. Telling me I don't sag.
54 had formed an opinion, and 53 of those 54 were guilty. And then right away, Judge Rowe snaps back and says, and they were excused, correct? And he has to say, yes. I mean, does that just blow his argument out of the water at the very beginning there?
It doesn't necessarily blow his entire argument out of the water, but it's clear that they weren't necessarily buying that argument. And he kept going back to the two jurors who lied. And let's remember, those were two prospective jurors who lied. They were not two impaneled jurors who allegedly lied. They're supposed to assume
Thank you, Jared.
that what Michael Ufferman and what the defense is then saying is the truth, as opposed to assuming what those jurors said was the truth. So again, he kept referring to them as these two jurors who lied. They were not two impaneled jurors who made the decision of innocence or guilt. They were two jurors that were excused and never impaneled and never sat on the jury. That was purposeful that he kept referring to them as jurors.
Like
There's
me.
no
How do
doubt
I
about
do
that.
this?
But let's remember, they were prospective jurors. They were not two folks that sat there and determined whether or not Charlie Adelson was guilty or not.
The Kingdom of Lesotho is here along with Tim Jansen. So Tim, they talked a lot about an affidavit requiring a good faith statement. There was no affidavit. And then they go into this change of venue almost always need to be done during jury selection. These were arguments that Ufferman was making. And then the judge, after he says that the change of venue almost always needs to be done during jury selection, the judge responds, well, there's almost 300,000 people who live in Tallahassee. Was it so persuasive, the media, the judge says, that they would all be swayed? And Tim, When I came to your house, I stopped in a liquor store, asked like 5 people if they ever even heard of this case. They said no. Are they just not buying the argument, as maybe Joe and Jared are suggesting?
Well, the rule is kind of cumbersome because the rule says you have to do it in writing before, right? And then, but the Supreme Court says you have to try to pick a jury. So it could come out that during the jury selection itself, you find pervasive bias. And so then you probably have to judge, can I take a half-hour break so I can file my thing in writing to make sure I comply with the rule? That's a kind of a conflict that one of the judges mentioned in reality, because is that realistic that you're having to pick the jury, you find problems, taint that's shown, but then you have to go back and put it in writing to make sure you preserve it. I don't think that's true. I thought issue 3 was interesting because when they didn't allow that evidence in, the attorney general was saying sometimes you have to protect the defendant from himself. That is not the position a judge is in, okay? There is trial strategies at time that you have to get your client to waive. Like if you're gonna say, I'm gonna admit that I committed this offense, but I didn't commit this one, you have to, that's a trial strategy, but you have to get your client to consent to cover yourself. But the court cannot be in the position saying, I'm not you say that because that may taint you. Now, the judge may off the record say, Mr. Defendant, you acknowledge that you've discussed this and you're waiving this, or you're going to enter this evidence that might be prejudicial. But I thought the attorney general was wrong by saying that the judge's position is to protect the defendant from himself. And this went to that racist comment, misogynic comments on those texts that they wanted in. And they tried to say, well, they didn't preserve it. He said they wanted them all in. And so that is something that at least one of the judges, Winokur, was amenable to.
Yeah. Real quick, if you're on here, please hit the like button and subscribe. Goes a long way in growing the channel. We've got a Patreon page. Joe Patuto, there's a question here from Aristotle J4DM. So is the true issue for the panel pivotal on Rashbaum did not document his concern of bias due to news online coverage. So the record to rely upon does not exist for the 3-judge panel. Does it go back, I guess, to Rashbaum not documenting this concern is the essence of this question.
That's what Ufferman ultimately said at the end. And if they lose the appeal, which I think is going to happen, and they come in on what Florida calls a 3850 motion, that's when he will make the argument. These things happened, they were prejudicial, and it was because it was ineffective assistance of counsel that it happened. So that's where they're going to do it. It's not lost. It's just he couldn't raise it in this appeal.
Jared, here's an interesting question. Thank you, Joe. Mom of the doxy, mom of Arlo the doxy. Hello, Arlo. Did you feel the court's comment that Charlie could have brought in witnesses to confirm his character rather than admitting all of his emails was effective and accurate? Does that go to ineffective assistance of counsel that I guess they didn't bring in some sort of character witnesses?
Well, I think you heard Ufferman's response to that question from the judge, which was absolutely, and we'll be back here to argue that, or at least he'll have a brief. Whether he gets an oral argument on that or not is to be determined. But I think that was the judge asking him, why are you not making the argument, or why are you not acknowledging that he could have done this? And him saying, we will acknowledge he could have done this. And the defense attorney did a bad job by not doing that. So it wasn't necessarily an argument from the judges, because remember, the judges don't make arguments, but it certainly was a question to Michael Ufferman about that, and kind of tipped his hand, and we saw Tim kind of laugh there in the background when he said it. So we will see that argument made.
Go ahead, Tim.
Mike was giving kudos to the lawyers about the venue stuff, and at the very end, he's basically saying, yes, they were completely ineffective, and we're going to be here later on that issue.
Yeah.
Tim, what do you think? I mean, I think Rashbaum has to be watching this. What do you think his reaction to that would be?
I think he realizes he's got a lot more to learn about trying cases. But lawyer and realize on it, he's got to preserve he should learn the criminal rules of procedure. They knew well ahead of time they wanted to change a venue because they made this. They should have realized that they had to file something in writing, and they should have realized that they should have kept objecting. We object, and I can't believe they didn't ask for extra peremptory challenges. And that's what the state attorney general said. They didn't even ask for extra peremptory challenges. And that kind of, even the judge said, it didn't show that they were preserving that issue.
Yeah. Joe from D here, are any of these judges showing their hand with the question they are asking? Can you get a sense of which way they are leaning right now?
Well, yeah, but the other thing is they are trying to satisfy themselves on the questions they have. So in a way you can say they're tipping their hands. In another way you can say they just want to be sure that the things that they pointed to that they think maybe have been soft in the arguments, whether they're right, whether the lawyer on either side is going to be able to satisfy them on a point. But generally, what they're doing is they're asking questions about the places where they have questions. Usually that tells you which way they're leaning, but it doesn't always. But I just don't think, I didn't think that this was going to be a successful appeal. When I read the briefs, I think it sounded better hearing the argument from Ufferman than it read in the briefs, but I still don't think it's enough. I've been toying with the comment that he made about ineffective assistance of counsel. If I were on the appellate court and I had a genuine question about one of these issues, would I say, yeah, that's what really it is, so you come back later and make that argument and roll it in? Or would I say, yeah, that may be what it really is, and I've got a question already. Maybe we should handle it now and not cost more money and more time while this appeal goes up when the issue is going to come up. And so I'm sitting here trying to think which way I would lean on it.
Yeah. And Jared, by the way, this is a great point from Cowboy Girl 007. He had this guy, Josh Dubin, who some people said he was paying up to $250,000 to act as a jury consultant. Tim is shaking his head. Should that have been brought up by the state, maybe, to say, look, they even brought in an expert to handle this issue. Where was this guy?
I don't know that they necessarily needed to bring that up in this argument. I do think that will get brought up if there is another appeal, or I should say when there is another appeal. But again, it just goes to show money doesn't buy you the best things sometimes.
That is for damn sure. Tim Jansen, I mean, how many appeals can be granted? I mean, how many times can they go back and appeal this decision, this verdict?
So this is his direct appeal, and this court can decide which way they're going to decide. And then he can ask to have the Supreme Court hear it, which is very unlikely. And then they'll go after 2 years. Within 2 years, they can do a ineffective assistance of counsel, which I'm sure they're going to do. They're already preparing for it. And then they can deal that. But that looks like the end of it.
Can go in federal habeas corpus, Tim, because he's claiming a Sixth Amendment constitutional right. So, I'm not going to say they're going to win, because they can certainly extend the amount of time they argue about it.
They can do that.
Yeah, Joe, what about just the fundamental issue of jurors in this country? I mean, they do a difficult job. They have to sit there. They're paid next to nothing. In a way, doesn't a lot of this just undermine the entire jury process? I mean, I know they've got to question it, but what about upholding that, kind of?
Well, they clearly are worried about it. And there were at least 2 questions that went to that. You want us to sit here and try to examine what the juror said. Why shouldn't we believe them as compared to, your argument that you shouldn't? So I'm sure it's a concern with the appellate court here. What I don't understand, I didn't understand it when I read the briefs, and I don't think I saw that part of the trial, is why, with the arguments they were making, they didn't go listen to the tape. I mean, that would have given them presumably more concrete information. And the only thing I can think of is that they didn't want it, that they felt they were better off arguing what it might be than to find out that it wasn't.
That's what I thought.
By the way, Saudi Arabia is in the house. Shout out to Saudi Arabia, lest you think we are not a global phenomenon. Jared, so Michael Offerman gets up, and this was a very infamous case, and he makes the argument this is not like 1994. This is not like the trial of Danny Rowling, suggesting media has totally changed. And then the judge responds by going, "Look, I've turned off my propaganda box," referring to her TV set. She said she uses newspaper for something that I'd never heard of. It was I don't know.
Wrapping mullet.
What is that? Is that wrapping paper?
It's a fish.
It's a fish.
No, a mullet
oh.
is a fish.
It's a
The hell
bottom
do I know
feeder.
about mullet. I thought a mullet was a haircut.
Well,
The
it's
bottom
that too.
feeder.
Yeah, what do I know? But anyway, that's what she uses a newspaper for, and on it went. So, you know, she just, to me, she was listening. I mean, all three judges were obviously very attuned to what was going on, but basically said, "Get out of here." You know, I just turned my TV off. But I don't know. That seems like a, you know, an easily an argument that you could easily poke holes in again if you're Michael Offerman.
Well, you could try to poke holes in it, but you're also assuming that an entire city of 300,000 people or whatever our population is today,
No one
and
ever
it's a
knows.
fairly transient population, as we've talked about a lot. There's a lot of people that come into this city and leave this city over the last, decade. We've had a population growth, but we've also had a population turnover. So you're assuming that everybody that was here during Charlie's trial was also here for the 9 years leading up to that trial and listening intently to everything
We talked about that.
this trial. And that's just not the case. You said it earlier, Joel, that you walked into a liquor store and talked to several people who had no clue about this case. I saw Abby's comment. She got into a Lyft and her Lyft driver knew nothing about this case. I have run into several people in this town that I know. So they know me, they know my, they now know my connection, but they had no idea about this case. So it's not like all 300,000 people or whatever our population is today know about this case, particularly when you're talking about the students at FSU, TSC.
So I'm going to move on because they're just reiterating everything we already know. We know that in this town, we've got a college and 2 universities. Professors move, students move, people graduate, they leave. It is nowhere near the same town today as it was 11 years ago when this poor man was murdered in his home. Just nowhere near. So, I mean, we don't need to hear that again. But, I mean, Jared Ross made some really good points. I talk to people all the time. I posted on Living Tallahassee. Do you know what that is? Do you know what? No, we don't know. We have no idea. I thought they were all already arrested and in jail and prison. So a lot of the people I do ask think, oh, it's really over with. They don't realize that Wench is still available to be prosecuted by the state attorney office, which in my humble opinion, I do not think is happening. So I know that's an unpopular statement, but it's true. I really don't believe it. I got to update the title of this show. I was like Epstein, but we got into it. You like my lipstick? Do I know what it is? So I'm so cheap. I'm frugal. No, I'm not. I just like the color. And it's Wet and Wild. Like I'm doing this like get ready with me thing. Dark pink frost. I like a frost. Like I am from the era of the frost lipstick. And says this. Like my ring. My ring came from Murano. I love it. It's gaudy as hell. It's not usually my typical, but it reminds me of Murano. And it reminds me of not being here. Tallahassee. Sorry, Tallahassee. You like Wet and Wild lipstick? Oh yeah. I use their eyebrow pencil because it's really sharp. What number is this? Golly, let's see what number it is. 530D. 530D. Dark pink frost. And it's not that old. It should be around. Like I don't keep old lipstick. It smells, right? This has no scent, which I like. And it doesn't feel gummy. Ooh, I can remember my mom's old lipsticks, and there's these people on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram reels, and they find these old vintage lipsticks, and I just want to vomit when I see that because I think it's probably real gummy and tacky and old. You can't freshen that up, right? You can't. 530D is the color. You like their tinted moisturizer. I wear a full coverage face. This shit is all over me, okay? I remember going to the Clinique lady at Ulta, and I was asking her for something, and she's like, would you want like a medium cover? Absolutely not. I want full mastic, like a dead body. That's what I want. I want it all covered, like a drag queen would wear. That's me. 531D is your color. What's that? Now I got to go look. 5312. A photo focus. A little darker. Yeah, I don't really do well with the light pink, but this one's okay. I didn't want to wear anything too red because, you know, this is red. If I'd known, it never occurred to me that this was going to be on a Zoom or on camera, I would never have worn this sweater today, ever. Because it had print on it, I would never have worn it. But it was the only other warm sweater I have. 531C. Okay, now I got to go. Oh, I like that. It's very muted finish. Silk finish. I like that. I don't know anything about lipstick, but I did just find out Rosa Parks' husband had a car. What the actual fuck is that? Are you freaking kidding me? Oh, someone said my sweater said Ohio. Rosa Parks' husband had a car. He didn't want to take her anywhere. No joke. The guy. The guy had a license and everything. Now look at my hair. That is some funny shit right there. That's some funny shit. So, for a few minutes, my disgust at the what you call it, Epstein thing has not ended. And the only place I've looked, because if I go look in the files, I think I'm going to retch. So the only place I've looked was, I wish to God they would stop redacting these names. The only thing I could think of that they are redacting the names of the senders of this BS is that they're making a case against them. Does anyone know? Why would you redact that? So Micah says, why did you redact this name? It's not a victim. He's talking about a little girl. Why would you redact that? God is a construct. Cute girls are real. Deepak Chopra. If what you knew about celebrity and people that we may have looked up to for so many years doesn't change after this nonsense, it never will. It'll never change. Deepak Chopra. The mind bleeds into the world. God is a construct, so he's an atheist. Cute girls are real. And I always save this stuff, so that's why I like it. I'm not liking what they say. I'm liking the post so I can go back to it. It's just so unbelievable. Katie Couric is in the files, thanking the then convicted sex trafficker. This is post his conviction for having sex with a 12-year-old for some rockin' lasagna. Isn't she a big fat see you next Tuesday? Joe Manchin, he's in it. Governor of West Virginia, senator for a very long time, who all of a sudden resigns, right? He was the unifier. They're all fake. Every single person is fake. Oh, this is about Savannah Guthrie's husband, Michael Feldman, founder of the DC-based Glover Group, a Bill Clinton, Al Gore Democratic political fish tank. Named in the Epstein files, has been seen in its websites go dark, scrubbed. Yeah. Samantha Guthrie husband is a little tiny man in a lot of ways. Nancy was abducted from her bed in Tucson. Maybe it was someone going after Savannah Guthrie's mother. Prince Edward, Queen Elizabeth's son, visited Epstein Island while a 13-year-old was there to be abused by politicians. The royal family is sick. The Epstein file released as the domino meme. TMZ is reporting on Savannah Guthrie's mother, but of course not the fact that Harvey Levin offered himself up as Epstein's PR guy. So nice. Sarah Ferguson emails to Epstein show increasing desperation. Thank you, Sarah. Could you use one of my daughter's show, Buckingham? Thanks. He wanted a private tour. And a parent reply says, of course. The juror that July, referring to a separate occasion, she apparently writes to Epstein apologizing that the girls were not around this weekend. Shows I don't crack the whip when I'm not in the country. Can you imagine your mother being that sick? Apparently, Epstein owns a piece of property or owned a piece of property since he's dead, allegedly, called the Zorro Ranch out in New Mexico near Santa Fe. And it says 2 kids were strangled, died, and were buried during their sexual abuse at this ranch. At the ranch. So proton mail, that's Jeffrey Epstein, and I forget who else used proton mail. Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls, probably Russian or Ukrainian, were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G, Ghislaine Maxwell. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish get it. Nice guy. Salt of the earth. They're saying he probably worked for the Mossad or the Mossad was running him. I don't know. Burn them with a magnifying glass. Jeffrey, can you organize? Can you call? Can you arrange? Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson has since resigned his seat, apparently a homosexual, resigned his seat with the Labor Party, but still retains his peerage. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has since asked that his peerage be removed. Peter apparently is in a photo that looks like Rachel Markle, otherwise known as the Duchess of Bitchface. And it looks to be her in a robe. Or her hands, the way Meghan has her hands like this all the time is the way that this woman has her hands. I don't know why she does it all the time, but it's an affect of hers. And Peter Mandelson was in his whitey tighties. Nice guy. Glad you're enjoying Harvard, Peter Mandelson. However, I must tell you that after years of you being by your side, supporting your boyfriend when he needed it, unwavering in my guidance through emotionally rejected, I am disappointed in what appears to be a one-way street. Jeffrey, can I have? Jeffrey, can you give? Jeffrey, can you organize? Jeffrey, can you call? Jeffrey Epstein didn't like that. The first paragraph said, I thought you knew because I've said and written how much I support you. You're not an easy person to give to you because you already said, but when you didn't have during their trials and tribulations, I never left your side. I was always there with advice. So they had a lover's tiff, the two of those. They thought with the cameras off, these two, the Podestas are foul human beings. They thought the cameras are off. Does the island come with children or can we abduct them? Let's see what this says.
This one's in Thailand.
I've been to Thailand before. Beautiful.
Beautiful. What comes with the island? There's a small villa there. You could practically build with the island.
There's building things.
Yeah, there's
Do the islands come with the children or the children?
This island does have a small school. There are children.
Okay, so I don't know if that's...
Yeah.
What countries are near to abduct them from?
Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Yeah, no.
Philippines?
Philippines. The Philippines.
Okay.
The Filipinos, you know, if they're not being a nurse, they're being your person, okay? So,
True, true.
yeah. So,
What age ranges?
below 10, I don't really.
Can you even imagine? I've never seen that before. I'm just scrolling with you. Can you even imagine being that sick? And they're all standing around like they're deciding what cigar to smoke. They're being your servant. Or, yeah, true, yeah. What age ranges? The Zorro Ranch Trust, this is true, won the $85 million Colorado lottery in August 2008 after the drawing was interrupted during the live drawing. Are any of these pigs alive? Yes, most of them are. Most of them are alive. The Podestas are alive. Yep. He was chief of staff. He was chief of staff. That little tiny human being was chief of staff for Bill Clinton. He is a disgusting human. Really trying not to swear. It's almost Lent. Why is Ava Dubin trying to persuade Epstein to visit her in 210 by saying that her then 15-year-old and 5 of her friends will be there? Are these people offering their children up? Come and visit. Epstein, and of course, a redacted individual. I don't understand this. I don't understand why names are redacted. Names should not be. The littlest girl was a little naughty. This Tuesday lady, her son was just arrested for raping people over the weekend. A serial rapist. She was there. She said she regrets having any interaction with Epstein. She needs to resign as the crown princess, whatever she is, and leave and be hung up to dry. Of course, Epstein met with Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner. Remember his laptop at the Ritz-Carlton? Not long after Weiner resigned from Congress. Must have been a riveting conversation. Of course, Alexander Soros is allegedly married to Huma, which is probably a fake. I mean, she's like a foot taller than him. Am I in New York until the 23rd and then Florida? I mean, they don't even care that we know. I have not seen anybody from the United States resign their post yet, their position, not one person. I know Peter Attia, I think that's how you say his name, who's the doctor who talks about longevity. CBS was going to hire him as a consultant, and now he is no longer being hired as a consultant. I haven't seen anyone else lose their role, not one person. Oh, remember the overpriced? Do you guys remember this? Do you remember when Wayfair had like a $55,000 rug? Remember the story about the names of overpriced Wayfair? Matching up with the names of missing children, and a lot of them were immigrant children. Remember this? Annabelle, 5 Shell. Jeffrey Epstein's assistant bought a single unlabeled item from Wayfair. $8,500 to Wayfair. Karina Shuliak. Some people, I think Rebecca and I were talking about it at breakfast today, that Karina was in love with him or some nonsense. Clintons are asking for public hearings. No, what the Clintons asked for today, because they didn't show up to the congressional hearings, is they wanted a private hearing with Bill in New York City in his study and their own transcriber. And Congress said no. Turkey wanted Sarah Ferguson behind bars for 22 years. Charges involved her undercover filming of orphans in 2008, allegedly for a documentary. Does anyone believe that now? Cancer is the least of that woman's worried. She's fled the UK after the latest drop. Where's she going to go? Argentina? I think her mother lived in Argentina, so her stepfather may be there. Where are you going to go? Where can you go? Wayfair furniture named after missing kids and sold for ridiculous amounts. Now we know it is all true. The rats. Cat Turd is a great follow. He doesn't need any more people, but Cat Turd is a great follow. British police open a criminal investigation against Peter Mandelson. He was the one in the whitey tighties standing next to a person who looks very much like Rachel. Prince Andrew's ex arranged to meet Jeffrey Epstein with her daughters days after his release from prison for pedophilia. Emails show Epstein's assistant asked him to pay $15,000 for a business class flight for Sarah and economy tickets for the girls. The girls' lives are ruined. They are absolutely ruined. Makes my eyes twitch. Podesta brothers were around the place where Madeleine McCann was abducted. And if you guys seen that sketch of the person who looks like the abductor of the McCanns, we showed it yesterday, and it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell. Really does. I think I saved it as a bookmark. But this is my entire feed on X, like this whole thing. I need everyone to go to hell immediately, but especially this piece of Deepak Chopra. Where is he hanging out? Who's covering for him? Missouri boarding schools. Thanks to the most recent document dump, we appear to have tied Epstein's network to boarding schools, which doesn't surprise me. You send your daughters to places, you hope for the best, you pay for the best, and like said today, Jared Ross, you don't get the best. 10 men charged over this. I can't even say this out loud, so I'm not going to. Epstein's writing style was textbook compliance test to see who was weak and therefore easy to manipulate. UN Refugee Agency. Oh, the UN is full of it. I mean, the number of people, I think she resigned. One of them resigned from the UN recently. A viewing of anti-Catholic artwork known as Piss Christ. Artist Andre laughed about the fact that Catholics would be there to protest against the crucifix soaked in urine. Nice guy. Salt of the earth. Let's take our kids on vacay. This is The Simpsons, which I don't know how they knew everything. I don't even want to know. Attention, some crazy creeps on an island somewhere are secretly running the world. Evidence has been presented to our inquiry today stating the survivor was raped. No reason to go forward on that statement. I can't. Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut is very good friends with Prince Andrew has been redacted. And the movie was taken off of HBO Max this weekend. It was on HBO Max. It is no longer on HBO Max. God forbid you see what's real. The public can't handle it, right? Isn't that what they tell us? The public cannot handle reality. Why on this is it redacted? Art Epstein purchase. Police assessing allegation that Epstein trafficked second woman to the UK to have sex with this subsequent slug. I don't even know what to call him. Martin Nowak, who is at Harvard, thanked Ghislaine Maxwell for her hospitality. I'm so happy I didn't kill anybody. What did he mean? Where is Martin Nowak? Why is he still employed by Harvard? Authorities say First Lady Jill Biden's ex-husband was arrested. Well, they're all slugs. I mean, anybody. Oh, my back just spasmed. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida Federal District, who handled Epstein's criminal case, was, I was told he belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. So the FBI, the CIA knew what was going on and never stopped it. The jokes write themselves. The jokes write themselves. What a C. Jeffrey Epstein described a dinner with Meta Zuckerberg, who wants to control Patty's links. You post a link on a Facebook group, it gets marked as spam. This man will mark the most innocuous word as spam and take your Facebook down. Meanwhile, he's partying it up. They're all the people who have the largest outcry are the guiltiest. But God forbid you post a link in a Facebook group. No wonder he looks like that now. He just looks awful. They rent and sell their children. He hasn't resigned from anything. His name has been thrown around as a pedophile forever. Forever. He's resigned from nothing. From nothing. You know why? Because he's protected by the Democrats. I'm sorry. I'm an MP. I'm no party affiliation, but you know I'm a conservative. And if there was a conservative, I'm throwing them out too. I don't care. I mean, I'm not related to these people. I could give a shit. But Podesta is still making millions. Nobody's calling for their resignation. That's why I'm doing this. Nobody. Oh, the Norway link is the only reason anyone here in Holland has heard about the new emails. Oh my God. My account is going to get nuked, isn't it? Bookmark this one. Fellow Greeks. What is it? I can't read it. It's too small. Just openly say it. Return to tribalism. Counter to globalization, amazing new alliances. This is to Peter Thiel. You and I both agree zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier finding the next bargain. Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel still has a job. Give me a call. His phone number's not redacted. Madeline says the number's still active. Ugh. Jeffrey Epstein victim had baby fathered by the pedophile, snatched away 10 minutes after birth. Billionaire had multiple secret children and hoped to create a superior gene pool. Child, your clear eye is the one absolutely beautiful thing. I want to fill it with color and ducks. She is gone and she won't be coming back. Jeffrey Epstein didn't just have G Vacation email address. The Epstein files alone show 11 emails, including Columbia Dental 1 at yahoo.com. That seems like a pretty innocuous email to do evil from. Melinda Gates went on NPR today. Let's listen.
Society, right? No girl should ever be put in the situation that they were put in by Epstein and whatever was going on with all of the various people around him. No girl. I mean, it's beyond heartbreaking, right? I remember being those ages, those girls were. I remember my daughters being those ages, right? So for me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on. I'm
But
in a
you got a big
really
fat check, didn't you,
unexpected,
Melinda?
beautiful place in my life. So whatever
See,
questions
this is a
remain there
problem
of
for
what I
me. I'm sure she can go all holistic on us, but that is a problem for me because I've never said it, but I was raped at what, 20 years old, and in another country, 100%, in Canada, in Nova Scotia to be exact. And that is such crock of crap I've ever heard in my entire fucking life because you never move on. I don't know that I got lucky. I had a fabulous therapist here in Tallahassee with EMDR. Her name was Patty. It was a coincidence. And I don't think I ever heard something so foul by a woman who allegedly did not go to that island. Because here's my challenge right now. You were married to that scumbag. Now, you probably didn't know where he was every second of the day. He was Bill Chlamydia Gates. However, probably wasn't even chlamydia because men don't know they have chlamydia. Women learn they have chlamydia unless he was just getting an STD test at any given time. This woman sitting there going, I'm in a beautiful place, while numerous people have been slaughtered for this deviancy, children abducted, kidnapped, sold, stolen, however you want to call it. However you want to call it. That she can sit there and go, but I'm in a beautiful place with my bazillions. I pushed this all the way over here. We're having a reckoning. No, you better have a reckoning. You need to have a reckoning because you knew this before all this shit came out. You're trying to save your own ass here. Okay? You were trying to, I called her out the other day, Melinda, now French Gates. She is despicable. I obviously don't know her personally. I don't care how much money she has. I will call her despicable because she is. You don't get to sit there in your, first thing I saw was a white sweater. I thought, you bitch. Sit there in a white sweater with her long hair, like, ooh, all innocent looking, like she's Laura fucking Ingalls, going, it's very personal to me because you're married to a deviant. You had children with a deviant. You're putting this aside because you can't come to terms with how you've contributed to the deviancy because you didn't come forward until your husband's name was released in the files. You knew. You went to court. You absolutely knew. Every woman that has been married, maybe the only one is Peter Adia. Well, she probably knew too, because she's giving birth. Her child is in the NICU, dying. I'm not sure if the child died or not, dying. And Peter Adia is like, no, I have an important meeting. Did she ever come forward? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe she did come forward to the Attorney General and say, my husband was there. I knew he was there. I need him investigated. No, she likely stayed there because people are more addicted to power and money, mainly power, than they'll be addicted to anything else in their life. Meth folds nothing. Methamphetamine folds, you know, when someone's on a crystal meth and they're like folded over, that ain't nothing to what these people are doing to themselves. This woman is diabolical. She's wearing white. She's got her little pendant. It's all a presentation. And until people realize that all of this is a presentation, nothing is real. Nothing. She's sitting there half crying, half cocked. I truly despise her, and I've never met her. Just sit there and go, what these little girls went through You don't have an effing clue, lady. You're party of this. And you're out first thing, NPR, very friendly, very Democrat friendly, very pedophilia friendly. Let's face it. Very, very pedophilia friendly. And here she is, white sweater, so demure, so proper.
Can't even begin to know all of it. Those questions are for those people and for even my
See?
ex-husband.
Push,
They need
push,
to answer for
push.
those things, not me.
Push it away, because if she knew, she needs to crawl in that grave next to where those babies are. If she knew. Oh, look at her automatic body response. First of all, she's an extremely unattractive woman. But look at her auto responses. Push, push, push.
And I am so happy to be away from
You're not away
all the
from it.
muck.
I wonder
You're
what
not
your
away.
dominant emotion is when you read these news articles.
Just unbelievable sadness. Unbelievable sadness, right? And again, I'm able to take my own sadness and look at those young girls and say, my God, how did that happen to those girls, right? And so for me, it's just sadness for, I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. I had to leave I felt I needed to eventually leave the foundation. So it's just sad. And it's
Eventually had to leave the foundation. Lady, you are scum. You are scum. You're sitting there in your white little sweater, very demure, very proper. You know how that goes. Very this, all push away. Her body language is so foul to me. So disgusting. She knew, and she did nothing. She knew her husband was on that island. She knew it. All the women that are married to these pigs because you want to stay on the foundation deserve everything the men get. Everything. And the men may not get anything. Clearly, the United States doesn't have the balls. I don't even know why. I do not know why. Is being a CIA asset that important? You're willing to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of girls, apparently? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of girls sacrificed. More than we'll ever know. There's millions of more emails to come.
kind of like, at least for me, I've been able to move on in life. And I hope there's some justice for those now women, right? We see them standing up in front of microphones in DC. What they went through is just unimaginable, I think.
Thank you, Mia. 100 bazillion %. I know this because I lived it. I have a daughter. You cannot imagine what I would do. I've told anybody who dated my daughter, I will take it to the mattresses, which is a Godfather reference. I don't care. You allowed thousands of daughters to continue to be violated, degraded, harmed, tortured. They don't get the opportunity, Melinda, to use their billions and move on. And move on. I'm in a beautiful place right now. I want to just flick her in the eye like, you stupid bitch. That is all you are to me. Ugh. Just horrid. Those girls will never move on. Ever. You got a prince. Remember when Andrew and that scum-sucking wife he was married to got married? Everyone loved it. They loved it. They loved. Thank God Diana. I mean, can you imagine Sarah and Diana, the fun and the playfulness? Now we know why Diana stopped talking to Sarah. I just thought of that. There was a bigger riff, I think, than what we will ever know. Because Diana cast Sarah out. God, we're having a reckoning. You need a reckoning, lady. Those people, they had settlements. Of course they had settlements, but that doesn't fix the disgust that they feel on the inside. Children are of no value in these elite. Children have no value. These grown ass white men standing there talking about how are we getting does the island come with children? Does the island come with children? I'm fighting here in town to get kids really educated. Nobody gives a shit about the education. They care about the teachers and the teachers' salaries. And if the teachers' salaries increase, the kids will be educated. Are you all losing your minds? That is not how this works. Kids can't conjugate a sentence, which means they can't write a sentence. AI is not going to be able to do everything forever. It can't. You got to edit it. It's not real. These kids have absolutely no critical thinking. And all this town, all this indigo blue town cares about is the teacher's salary. If the teacher made $50,000 more, my kid would be educated. Have you lost the plot altogether? You leave your kid to go yoga. Well, I'm just making fun of women right now. You will not allow your child to make a decision. So when the child is grown up, they can't make any decisions. What happens when you die as a parent? Will your child be able to live a life that is healthy and have structure? Likely not. This chick who gave her daughter a bazillion-dollar wedding, knowing, remember, they were already divorced, gave her daughter horse girl, all this shit, stood alongside Bill Gates, knowing what he did. Unforgivable. I heard his stock, Microsoft stock went down 440 million. I think the stock should, I think they should all lose their company. They shouldn't get one dime from any of us. And you don't even have a choice. You don't even have a choice. I can't even delete one Windows product off of this computer. Can't delete it. It's that bad. Look at the Peter Pan collar. So I'm pushing it away. I'm pushing it away. You are diabolical. You went to that wedding of your child, standing alongside him, pretending everything. I had to leave the foundation eventually. What? What are you even talking about? What does that even mean? I have a Mac as well. But in cybersecurity, when I was going to school, the Mac wasn't good enough. You had to have Windows to be able to work, and in cybersecurity, you had to. David Ellison, Skydance Media, now controls
I think we're having a
CBS
reckoning
and Comedy Central.
as a society.
$40,000 wire transfer in October from Epstein to David Ellison. Why does David Ellison need $40,000? Could somebody please explain this to me? Dude was going to pay cash for a company a couple months ago. Why is that the case? Why would he need $40,000? The really bad stuff Epstein did, he didn't talk about it in an email. The really bad stuff hasn't even been released. 50 Cent's working on a Jay-Z documentary. Honestly impressed with Epstein's ability to answer so many emails. My only question is, who's currently serving the market Epstein created? The demand does not disappear overnight. Those grown men in beautiful suits looking at a board like this. A slideshow of, I can't bring it out with my feet don't fit. Where is this? A whiteboard. Think of it like this. This is just like houses. A whiteboard, an island, children attached to it. What in the ever-loving, godless humans? God can't come back. Jesus cannot come back enough. He cannot come back fast enough. Absolutely not. He just cannot come back fast enough. This screenshot appears to show a PayPal receipt from Epstein's assistant purchased. This is the single item from Wayfair, but the item itself is unlabeled. Any idea what that might have been? Let's see what Grok says. Based on the recent Epstein file releases, Karina Struliak was his girlfriend. No verified records show this exact purchase. A known 2018 buy by her was bathrobes from a UK firm. The 8453 could be for high end. It's not for furniture. It's not for furniture. Here's Ted Lieu. He's another freak. He's still a senator and Democrat mega donor Ed Buck. Ed Buck is a pedophile and is currently serving 30 years in prison. Oh, Muammar Gaddafi's son, Safi, was just assassinated. Ghislaine Maxwell, parent nephew, emails her a wish list of actresses he'd like to do nasty things to and ends it with, "Thank you very much for offering all these things." What is wrong with it? Like, how do you get to that point in your life? I hope you're well, Aunt Ghislaine. I look forward to seeing you. When that might be, however, I'm not sure. I'll email you when I'm able to do something with you. As for my wish list, I'd like to do Natalie Portman, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Denise Richards. As for the things I'd like to do whenever it'll be in London, New York, New Mexico, or the Caribbean. Not quite sure at all, though. I will look into it. In New York, besides see the sights, possible some theater or something. Who does that? And why is his name redacted? His 10,000-acre ranch in New Mexico, known as Zorro, was miles from civilization and featured a massive underground lair that an IT contractor compared to a dungeon outfitted with cameras. It also had an airstrip, helicopter pad, and much more, including, according to claims, a baby production facility. He legally, through campaign donations, paid off the local sheriff and a wide range of New Mexican politicians and operated there. And every single one of those people should be arrested. And I don't know what the F. Pam Bondi's doing, but it's clearly, she said there was no list. Do you remember that? Do you remember when Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, and frankly, should be ashamed to show her face anywhere, literally says there is no list. Maybe there is no list. Like, where's my piece of paper? No list. There's a diary of a victim held at that ranch. It was written by a girl who was used as an incubator, forced to give birth to babies who were then immediately taken from her, likely to be sold or worse. Because let's get the adrenochrome. We need a blood transfusion, right? That's what we read yesterday. We need one blood transfusion. That's all we need. Hey, Rich. Jeffrey is asking if you can FedEx the painting he had made of the massacre of the innocents to the ranch. It's the large 9x9 canvas that he rolled out for him to see in the entryway where they are killing babies. He wants it to use on the ranch and is hoping you can FedEx it today. Rich Barnett. I got nothing. Bill Richardson is a pervert. Bill Richardson arranged to meet with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the governor of New Mexico at the time, at least 9 times after the financier's Florida conviction on sex crimes, including a visit to the private island, newly erased Secretary of Energy for Bill Clinton, and a pervert. His name came out a long time ago. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody in the United States government cares. Maybe Trump. Apparently Trump. Nobody cares. Kash Patel, I don't think he cares. Pam Bondi, I know she doesn't care. She's being raked over the coals. She doesn't want to prosecute anybody. You won't find the tunnels. Shortly after Epstein didn't kill himself, the USGS recorded a 2-point-something earthquake in the area, which is not a geologically active area. Know what makes a 2-point earthquake? Blasting. That's why explosive contractors have to notify the USGS before they blast. I believe that. Apparently, he built some tunnels on the island, but then he filled them with concrete. Who was in the tunnels when he did that? I just don't understand. Epstein and Maxwell buried 2 foreign kids who were strangled to death. I don't understand. I don't understand. Is that like the Tallahassee Police Department? Patty, we understand you're getting death threats, but unless there's basically a bullet to your chest, we can't do anything about it. We haven't witnessed them saying it. Got it. Got it. Oh, you had a hit. I didn't have a hit and run, but my business partner did. Oh, you had a hit and run and damaged your vehicle. So sad. Please don't follow the perpetrator. We don't want that. Well, guess what? Who's not following the perpetrator? You. This is on a much larger scale from that, right? Nobody is following the perpetrators. You don't go after them because that would be a crime. Don't do that. Don't take it into your hands. That's a problem. But we're never going after them. Because if we do, the whole thing falls apart. The whole thing. I don't even know what to say. Why bury evidence when you can compress it into something eternal and wear it like a sick F? All of the people with the red, remember the red, do you guys remember this? The red rings. All of these people wears a red ring. Why are they wearing these red rings? They're all the same. Every single one of them have the red ring. Wait till you get a look at the mansion for the guy who bought the Zorro mansion for Epstein. Well, actually, Les Wexner, Victoria's Secret, mansion is like 20 mansions on one property. He's like 6 of them. Nobody cares. You know why? Because they won't get money for their campaign. They won't get money for their campaign.
And that he was going to suggest that Bill Gates had additional affairs and that he tried to get medication to treat
Looks like a
sexually
hostage
transmitted
video.
infection, and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. His representative has said all of this is false. It is not on you to have to respond to the details of that alleged behavior, but I wonder what your dominant emotion is when you read these news articles with these details.
Sad. Just unbelievable sadness. Unbelievable sadness, right? And again, I'm able to take my own sadness and look at those young girls and say, my God, how did they...
That's my problem. I'm taking my own sadness and going, oh, you're so sad. Oh, but hey, I got my millions and I'm pushing it over there. Bitch. If you search the desert outside his compound, there's giant burns of dirt with backhoe tracks where things are buried, multiple small airplanes parked. Who owns the property now? The property in the image and the linked X post is Zora Ranch, a large 10,000 square foot estate near Stanley, New Mexico, formerly owned by him. Epstein purchased it in 93 and held it through entities. It was part of his estate afterwards. So it doesn't say. As most recent records, the ranch was sold in 23 for an undisclosed price after being listed for $28 million. The buyer is San Rafael Ranch, a limited liability company registered in New Mexico shortly before the sale. The registered agent is a Charles V. But the ultimate beneficial owners, individuals, have not been publicly disclosed. It's effectively anonymous private ownership. The new owners protest the county's property valuation, arguing was overvaluing at $21 million, could be close to $9 million, which aligns with it being under private control. Regarding government entry, no, the government cannot simply enter and dig. Law enforcement or federal officials, you have to have a warrant. And you have to have, at least in Florida, there's a girl that's been missing for 20 years, Allie Gilmore. And because the family of the boyfriend, I believe, it's the boyfriend of the ex-husband, I'm not sure. Now ex, because she's presumed dead because it's been 20 years. This pregnant woman has been missing. They have a large farm. And know what I've been told is that law enforcement was out there several times to do searches, but they can't just keep going. They have to have something substantive. So at 10,000 square, acres, not square acres, but just acres, you have to have something substantive. You can't just go shoot in the dark and hope you find something. It's unbelievable. And Ghislaine Maxwell, once again, is trying to get an appeal. And her appeal isn't based on her wrongdoing. Her appeal, from what I read, is based on the fact that the men were not convicted. What? That's worse than Charlie's. I don't know anything about Bohemian Grove. Her and just her sadness. I'm so sad. I had a nephew. I no longer have him or claim him. But I had a nephew that we would get yelled at by his mother, my former sister, who would say things like, "You've made him sad." Did we make him a pedophile, though? Because that's what he is. So we didn't do that. But we made him sad, and we shouldn't make him sad. Thank you, Surf. That's very nice of you. She has no emotions. It's all fake. All of this is fake. The white sweater, the pendant. She had a stylist going, "What should I do? I'm effed." I have to come out here looking like the victim of an STD. That's what I have to come out. I am the victim of Bill Gates. We are having a reckoning. No, you are having a reckoning because you didn't help protect these children. I think it's girls and boys. I don't think it's just girls. You think Peter Mandelson wanted a boy or a girl? He's 100% a homosexual. So you think he really wanted a little girl? Skull and Bones. You know what was in Skull and Bones? George Bush. Les Wexner. They don't even know where he is right now. I'm going to end it with that. Who are you? Oh, FYI, some asked Jack. Let me show you who it is. Hold on. Maybe you guys know who this person is. I don't know who this person is. Rebecca says it's. Let me go back to it. I got to remind me to call my real sister because it's her birthday. This guy, person, I don't know. Let me share with this. Who is, I forget who. I wanted to ask Rebecca if she's still here. John Kerry. Thank you. I couldn't remember his name. Rebecca mentioned this to me as probably someone named, is it Clint or Clinton, who has been removed from all of the, if Carl publicly shames Wendy, we will publicly shame him. Who the fuck are you? Exposing cyber bullies who publicly shame Wendy. I don't care. You can't publicly shame me. I've already had it. You can't do anything to me. The only thing you can do is harm my children. And if you do that, all bets are off because I will find you. So I don't know who this exposing cyber bullies is. I don't know why Meta, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and his clan of Satanists allow somebody like that on Facebook. Don't know. Glenn Thomas. Oh, Glenn. Yeah, wasn't he? Yeah, you were saying he was writing a book, but I'm sorry. I thought you said Clint. Whoever it is a coward. My real sister shares your mom's birthday. Aw. Yep, Mandy is my real sister, and she turns 50 today. She's my youngest sister. If you weren't a mod here, you'd be blocked. Why is that? He lives on DMs on Reddit. Oh, that's right. You said there. I'm a free speech girl. Unless you're really harmful. I mean, yeah, or you're just trying to pick a fight over and over again. And sometimes the mods remove you and I don't, I don't even see it. But I just have no time. Couldn't help but write the essays. Let's see. What is his? Hold on. Here she goes. January. I didn't even know this happened. Man, people don't. Pat, here she goes. I look so thin in this picture, though. Let me show you. I look so thin. Look at this. She goes on Patty's Playhouse on YouTube, and her exact word, we can't get enough of that horror. Let's make her infamous. Whore. She's a whore. 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 Oh, he's been at it. I never even go in here. I mean, I do just to post my own stuff. It's got to be him. So if you just say, hopefully soon, it's not like I'm grateful for the hard work completed by the legal authorities in this case, but I feel like justice for Dan Markel won't be completed if she remains a free person. That's a cyberbully? Dude, you need medical attention. You do. Yeah, well, I'm not them, so. It's definitely the Glenn guy. He's a loon with multiple bots. I'm not going to block him because if you block him, you don't know what's going on X. So I'm not going to. Trina was really rough. Does anyone know she's back in the prison? Oh, that's my husband. So I'm going to go. It's 8:22. He's taking care of the dog the last couple nights so I could sleep because my back hurt. But I'm going to go say hi to Chris. I hope you all have a great evening. I know that was very disturbing, and I'm going to try and cleanse my brain of Melinda Gates. What a cunt. And I hope you all are breathe it out. So, my God. Oh, yeah, she's back in jail. What a shame. Just a shame, but Gerald will keep her alive. Thank you again, Debbie Martin. It's very kind of you. Thank you. And Wesley, 16 months with me. Thank you very much. Plus, like and subscribe. I ain't even asking that after I call these women a cunt. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.